Great. Then welcome everybody. And I want you to imagine, no, it's not working, to imagine a team. So let's say it's a software development team, but could be any team. And you know, in your organization, you're not the kind of small startup anymore where everything is easy. You have one cool bunch of people. Everyone is knowing what's going on. But you're like a medium-sized company or even a big enterprise. And of course, you don't have one single team. You have multiple teams. And probably your structure looks like this. You're structured in departments or business units or whatever. And of course, the teams have to interact with each other. Now, you have this team, and they're all good people. They're well-trained, educated, experienced people. But they have one problem, because the other teams come to them with requests. And because this team is working on a very critical part of your system, many different teams come to them with their requests. And it gets even worse because they don't come to them. They prefer to write the tickets on the electronic ticket system. So if this team has some kind of visual management, Kanban board or cardboard or whatever, it would look like this, completely crowded. And this is, of course, a problem because now you have this huge queues with a lot of work to do, and this leads to a lot of stress because our team is very nice and they want to finish everything. They want to be nice to their colleagues, the different stakeholders, but they simply cannot do this. It's too much. Also, what you're having now is a lack of transparency because you have all these huge queues and the tickets are hiding somewhere in the queues, and also the problems are hiding in your queues, and it's very hard to find them. Another problem is your lead times are getting worse and worse. They're increasing and increasing because you probably know Little's law, the more inventory you have in your system, the longer your lead times, right? And you have a lot of dissatisfaction. So people start blaming each other and say things like, you know, I've created this ticket 5 months ago, I've assigned it to you, but nothing has happened. So what are you doing the whole day? You can imagine this is not a completely made-up scenario. This is pretty much what we were facing like 1.5 years ago. When I say we, I mean Jimdo. That's the company I'm working for. It's a company based in Hamburg, but we have smaller offices in San Francisco and Tokyo. Here you can see the people working in our Hamburg office. We also have 6 office dogs. And what we do is we offer a website construction kit, which is really, really easy to use. So if you don't know anything about HTML or CSS, you want to build your own website, then Jimdo is the correct product for you. So it's very, very easy to click your own website. You can plug in like web module, shop module, picture gallery, whatever. And we have a freemium model, so you can use it without paying anything, or you want to add some extra features, you pay something about $5 a month. We have customers that are above 80 or under 12, I think, that are using our system, so it's really easy. And if you want to tweet about this session, I would prefer any kind of feedback. This is my Twitter handle, Arne Roock, and you know the hashtag is LKNA14. Now, back to our poor team. They have this problem, and I would like to look at this problem, and probably some of you are facing similar things, through 3 different lenses. And the first lens would be the flow lens. Because what we are seeing here is clearly a flow problem. And there's a little bit of theory behind this. So there's great talk by David Anderson. It's from the conference Lean Kanban Benelux 2011, I think. It's freely available on the internet. And David uses this analogy of this old-fashioned wage, where you have 2 weighing pans, I think. And he says, one weighing pan is the capability, so how much can you do, and the other side is demand. And if you have a picture like this, then you're lucky, then you have good flow, but usually the picture looks like this. You have way more demand than capability, and that means you have a flow problem. Now the question, of course, is what can we do to improve our flow? And there are basically 3 strategies. The first one would be, of course, increase capability, right? That's the first thing that comes to our mind. Let's hire more people, let's train them, let's provide them with better tools. All good things to do. Usually it's kind of investment you have to do because, for example, you know Brooks' law, adding people to a delayed project will delay the project even more. So if you add people to a team, probably their productivity will decrease at first. So you have this J-curve effect, but for sure it's a good thing to think about. The second strategy would be shape the demand. So make sure that you have any kind of filter so that not any kind of work gets into your system. And the third strategy would be eliminate failure demand. And failure demand is any kind of work that ends up in your system because you didn't do it right the first time. And when we talk about software development, failure demand is mostly bugs, right? So in my former career, I've worked as a consultant and I've seen many, many different companies and I've done a lot of Kanban workshops and system design workshops. We created this Kanban walls and we populated the Kanban systems. And mostly I use yellow cards for regular tickets and red cards for bugs. And what we see is that most teams have 30, 40, 50, or even 60% bugs in their system. So if we find a way to produce less bugs, we would have less demand, of course. But again, it's an investment you have to do. So I would like to talk about the second strategy, shape the demand. Now the question is, how do we do this? How can we make sure that we get less demand into our system without damaging our business? And here the second lens comes into play, and that's the queuing lens. So imagine our team has a Kanban wall, and it might look like this. It's pretty much standard software development process. And what's interesting here is the very left column, the to-do column, and the next column. What we see is that the to-do column does not have a work in progress limit, and that's pretty common for almost every team I've seen. And that's okay, but now the problem arises when there are different opinions about the point of commitment. Because all the different stakeholders who create the tickets for this team might think that the point of commitment is here. So they create a ticket, assign it to the team or an individual, and then they think, okay, now it's on their desk, now it's their responsibility, and the only thing I have to do is wait like 2, 3, 4 weeks, and then it's done. But the team might think, no, our point of commitment is here. It's not before an item enters our next queue that we make a commitment. So our to-do column, you could also call it backlog, is just a parking lot, and we put stuff in there, but we do not commit on anything in the to-do column. But if you have different opinions about where the point of commitment is, you have a problem in your organization for sure. Now, there are different ways of dealing with this. The first one would be education. Yeah? You educate everyone in your company you're working with what the point of commitment means and where it is, and make sure that everyone has the same understanding. This is nothing more than a parking lot, and here is the point of commitment when an item enters the next column. The second way of dealing with this would be putting a WIP limit on the to-do column as well. Okay, could be pretty much a higher WIP limit, but put a WIP limit on it and you might get rid of the problem. And the third strategy would be getting rid of the to-do column at all. And this is pretty much what we did with this team. So we introduced a thing that we call open prioritization meeting. And here's the way it works. On a bi-weekly basis, it takes place in the team room where the team is located, where all the stuff is, and where the Kanban board is sitting on the wall. And everyone in the company is invited to join them. And I mean really everyone, not only the development teams, it's also online marketing, customer support, sales, country teams. We have 12 different languages with country teams, everyone. And they come into their office, they walk there, and they have their request with them as a tangible item, as a piece of paper. So they're not allowed to create electronic tickets anymore, and they're supposed to walk into the office. That's really important. Now, the meeting is moderated and owned by one of the founders. So the most senior people we have in our organization, the 3 founders, and one of them owns and runs this meeting. And now, at the beginning, everyone who's in this meeting pitches his or her idea and says, I want you to do this, and I think it's really valuable for our company because of this and this and this reason. Now, everyone pitches his or her idea, and after that, they decide, so the team together with the founder and of course the input of the others, which items do we accept and which one do we decline. And of course, they only have so much capability, they cannot accept everything. So probably 50% or even more of the requests are returned to the requester. And they are returned immediately, and that's really important because we don't want to build a backlog. We only have this temporarily backlog for like 15 or 30 minutes during this meeting, but after the meeting it's closed again. And sometimes it's like someone pitches this idea and the founder says, yeah, thank you for your idea, it's a good idea, but we don't have the capacity for building it right now. Please come back in 6 weeks. Here's your ticket. Sometimes he says, yeah, it's a good idea, but sorry, we're not going to do this at all because we are focusing on another strategy here. And sometimes we find out that it has already been done. It happens. And it's a good thing to do because we get rid of a lot of overhead by creating tickets and then checking duplicates and all this stuff. So this worked really well. We got rid of this to-do column for external requests. They still have a small backlog for their own roadmap, but all the work that they do for other teams is really in this temporary backlog, and then it's closed again. And what we found out is that in this meeting, really great things happen. It's not only the queue thing that I was talking about, but other things as well. So in order to decide how many of these items can we accept, the team has to know what their capability is. So can we accept 2 or 3 or 5 or 10? They have never thought about this before, but now they're forced to think about it. The second really important thing is people walk into the office and they talk face-to-face with their colleagues from other teams. And that is really important because it creates understanding and trust. And that's why we are so keen of not creating tickets in our ticket system, but talking to each other in this meeting. What we also found out is that all the other teams, at the beginning, they were bringing like 4, 5, 6 tickets. But then pretty soon they realized we have no chance of getting them all accepted. So what now happens, for example, online marketing, they have 4 things they want to pitch in the open prioritization meeting, but they know let's focus on one, then our chances are higher that we get this accepted. So let's have a discussion in our team, which one is the most important one. Then we send one delegate to this meeting and he pitches the idea. What we also had is a really cool thing that some problems could be solved right on the spot in this meeting. Because in this meeting we have so much knowledge in the room, we have so many people with different backgrounds that they come up with really innovative and great ideas. So in one situation, one development team came into this meeting and said, we want you to do this and this and this, it needs to be developed. And then they had a very quick discussion and it turned out the only thing the team needed to do this by themselves is some kind of root access. What I've also witnessed is a situation that someone requests something, the team says, oh, that's a big thing. It takes us probably weeks to do this. And then someone else in the meeting says, oh, I have an idea. We could do the quick and dirty solution, you know, the 80% thing. That would be really quick in one day. Would that work for you? And the others say, yeah, this would work. Let's do this. So as soon as you put different people with different background and skills in one room, this kind of magic might happen. What I also really like about this meeting is the founder who runs this meeting is forced to educate the employees in the company strategy. Because whenever he says, no, we're not going to do this, he has to give his reasons why. He's saying, okay, you know, we're focusing on small and medium-sized businesses. Your idea is more for big enterprises, but that's not our main target audience, so let's not do this. And that's completely different from decisions being made in the 20th floor and the management floor, when nobody knows how these decisions are made. So people are directly there when the decision is made, and they're educated why this decision is made. What I've also seen is that the team creates their own ticket for their own meeting, which I found at first I found it really weird, but then I think, yeah, why not? So they bring their own tickets to their own meeting. And what I've also seen, and this is one of the coolest thing ever, one of the other two founders came into this meeting, brought his ticket, and he was declined. So the one founder says, thank you for your request, but we won't do this. So this is really a great success story, and I could end right now, but I think it's really valuable to think about this through one other lens, and that would be the systems thinking lens. There are a couple of great system thinkers. Most of them are dead, unfortunately. You probably have heard of Edward Deming, for example, Peter Drucker, of course. And my favorite systems thinker is called Russell Ackoff. He was an academic, a really bright mind, published great books and articles. And what I like about his books is they're really easy accessible, especially compared to Deming. Have you ever tried reading Deming? Yeah. And if you try, don't read Out of the Crisis. Read New Economics. It's way easier and thinner. But still, Ackoff is way easier, and it's also very entertaining. He's a very entertaining guy. And there's also a 15 minutes video on YouTube. It's called If Ackoff Had Given a TED Talk, and it's one of the most brilliant talks ever. It's only 15 minutes, and I really recommend watching this. So Ackoff gives the definition of a system that's kind of academic. He says a system is a set of parts where first, the behavior of each element has an effect on the behavior of the whole. Second, the behavior of the elements are interdependent. And third, each subgroup has an effect on the behavior of the whole, and none has an independent effect on it. Took me quite a while to digest this, and I don't expect you to do this right now, just that you have heard this, and perhaps you can read it afterwards. I can provide you with the slides. So we can imagine this like this. It's a very simple drawing here. We have our system, and it has boundaries. So every system needs to have a boundary. It has its environment. So here elements in the environments interacting with the system. And in the system, we have subsystems containing different elements, and they are interacting with each other. Right? Now, what's really important now is that Ackoff says the performance of a system is never the sum of the performances of its parts. It is the product of the interactions. And this is really, really important. And as soon as you have thought about this, you will see this everywhere. So when I read Ackoff, I saw systems everywhere, and I saw interactions everywhere. And I see many systems where the kind of interactions hinders the performance of the system. So my favorite soccer club in Germany is performing really, really bad this season. Although they have really great players. So the question is, why do they lose every single game, although they have these great players? And the reason is they don't know how to interact with each other. So you cannot buy the best players in the world and expect to have the best soccer club. It's not working like this. And another thing that's really important is this statement. So Ackoff says, if you optimize the parts of a system, you will sub-optimize the whole. And here's a great example for this. So imagine you have a car, and it's a good car, it's running, but you want to improve it. So what do? You hire a bunch of good engineers and ask them to improve your car, right? What would the engineers do? They take the car apart, examine every single part of the car, and then improve the parts of the car, right? So one engineer might say, this engine is not that good. I think Ferrari has the best engines, so let's take a Ferrari engine and put it in the car. Another engineer says, the steering wheels at Mercedes are really good. Let's take this one and put it in the car. And the third one says, I think the tires from Toyota are the best, so let's take those. And then they put the car together again, and what happens? It's not getting better, it's getting worse. And probably it won't work at all, because the parts cannot interact with each other, although the parts are really good. And Ackoff says, not only you have a worse car than before, he says, you don't have a car at all. And the reason for this is, a system is defined by its purpose. And the purpose of the car is to transport people from A to B. And you cannot do this anymore with this car, so it's not a car. And the lesson from this is always start with why. If you want to improve a system or a subsystem, according to systems thinking, you would always start with the question, why do we have this system in the first place? What's the bigger system it belongs to, and what's the purpose of the system? Like I said, the transportation thing. And then you would ask yourself, how can we improve our system or subsystem according to this purpose? Going back to our car example, you might end up with something like this. So if you live in Siberia and you have a lot of snow and icy roads, this might fit your purpose of transportation way better than the thing with 4 tires, right? But you will never get there by improving the parts and then setting them together again. So this was pretty much Ackoff or system thinking in a nutshell. And if we look at our problem through this lens of system thinking, we could say, by introducing this open prioritization meeting, we really have increased the performance of the system. And we did this by improving the interactions of the teams. So we didn't improve the teams at all. They work the same way they worked before, but they interact differently with other teams. What we also can see, so Ackoff said if you optimize the parts, you will sub-optimize the whole. And I think the opposite way is true as well. If you optimize the whole, you will sub-optimize some of the parts. And this is exactly what we see. So we optimized the whole, the interactions, but for some teams it got worse. Because before this meeting, they had their ways of sneaking items into the system. They had a very good relationship with the team, you know, drinking beer with them, all this stuff. And now we have this very clear interfaces, we have these policies on this meeting, and they cannot do this anymore. For them, it's a sub-optimization. And for me, it was really eye-opening to think about it. Yes, that's probably the way it is. If you optimize the whole, you must expect to, if you optimize the whole, you must expect to sub-optimize some of the parts. And in knowledge work, parts are often teams. Or subsystems are teams consisting of different team members. That's the way I look at this. So another thing that's really important in systems thinking is local optimization. That means you optimize one part of the system, you don't see the whole system, and that means at the same time you sub-optimize another part. And that happens all the time. And Don Reinertsen says sub-optimization takes place when the benefit of a change appears at a different place than the cost of a change. Right? I do something, I have the benefits immediately in my part of the system, but the costs appear at a different part of the system, and I don't have a feedback loop. And we had a great example for this kind of local optimization, probably 2 or 3 years ago. Here you see our infrastructure team. So they're dealing with all the server stuff. And some of our users were using our systems in a kind of weird way. So they were adding pictures over and over again and having like 400, 500, 600 pictures on one page. And the system was not built for this, so some of the servers crashed. Now, the infrastructure team thought about what can we do about this, and they decided to add a limit. So users were not allowed anymore to add more than, let's say, 100 pictures on one page. It was kind of easy to implement, and so after a while, problem solved. But what we realized at the same time, the workload for the customer support went up dramatically, because now all the users called the customer support or wrote emails, why am I not allowed to add more pictures anymore? And this is exactly what happens over and over again if you optimize subsystems or parts of the system. Now, how can you avoid this kind of local optimization? I don't have the golden bullet for this, but I have some thoughts about this. So the first one is, I think we should try to build one super team, one big team from time to time. So if you think about it, our company has 180 people, and we're one big team. We're working on one product. We want to do a great thing as one team. But in practice, we cannot do this. We cannot collaborate with all of these 180 people. That's the reason why we split into teams. Okay. Now, these teams have their own mission, their own goal, their work, their self-organized, cross-functional, agile teams, and they're working on their mission, but they don't see the big picture anymore. And naturally, they will always sub-optimize for their purpose. And I think it must be this way. So you cannot expect one team to focus on their mission and at the same time focus on the whole big system. So what we discovered in the open prioritization meeting, for a very short period of time, we formed this super team again. Because now people from different teams come together and they talk about business strategy, they talk about aligning their goals, they talk about what are we doing to achieve, and what's our purpose as a company. And we have 2 or 3 other formats for doing this, for aligning teams and forming this super team for a short period of time, because we cannot do this all the time. And the last thing I want to talk about is the bird's eye view. So in some parts of the Agile community, there's a lot of management bashing going on. People are saying, if you only could get rid of all the managers, everything would be fine. Because managers are keeping us away from doing our work. And I've seen companies where it's exactly like this. But if you think about it from a system thinking perspective, you need people who have this bird's eye view, who see the big picture, although big picture has become kind of a bad word, to avoid local optimization and to get the right people into one room to have the right conversation. And it doesn't matter if you call them managers or moderators or coaches or whatever, but you need these people. And I think they cannot be located in a certain team, because then they will tend to sub-optimize their team. So they need to be like outside the subsystems, and they need to go from team to team again. And I'm not talking about management from the management room. So good management, in my view, means managers are working with a team for a period of time, and then they're going back to other teams, and so that they keep knowledge about what are the teams doing, but also what's the big picture. Okay, that's basically it. Here I have a couple of resources. Here's the TED talk, the Ackoff talk I mentioned. Ackoff Best is a collection of essays. I think they're really good, really entertaining, really interesting. This talk by David Anderson, where he develops this flow model, which is, by the way, very similar to Csikszentmihalyi. Does everyone know chicken standing highly. Okay. Doesn't matter. I mean, I cannot spell it anyway, so. And the last one, this is a really interesting story. There's a radio show on the web. It's called The Story of Numi. It's 1 hour, and it's really, really interesting. So the story goes like, there was a joint venture of Toyota and General Motors, which was really extra special, because they were competitors, of course. But for some reason, they decided to do a joint venture in California, and the factory was called Numi, and they turned, this factory was the worst factory in whole America. Everyone agreed on this. They had the worst workers, they had sabotage in the factories, they had alcohol, they had drugs, they had prostitution. It was terrible. So they closed this factory. It was owned by General Motors. A couple of years later, they opened it again, did this joint venture, hired more than 50% of the same workforce than before, and turned this into the best factory in whole America. And the reason why I have this on the slide is it's a great example for systems thinking and how about system influences the performance. So in this story, it was not the people who were bad, it was the system that made the people do all these bad things. So if you have the time, it's 1 hour radio show, it's really great. If you're interested in Jimdo and what we're doing, I've written this small booklet. It's freely available on the internet. We have a couple of more things. One thing we call Goal Number 1. It's another format of aligning teams. Yeah, so really great stuff we're doing there. This is me. My name is Arne Roock. I'm something like coach, Kanban expert. I like to do karate. I'm very bad at swimming, and I like Scotch whiskey. And basically, that's it. Thank you. I think we have time for some questions. Yes?
So you said that the team brings its own requests to the meeting. What kinds of things are in there? Is that like technical debt or just internal tools for the team?
Yeah, so the question, what kind of items the stakeholders bring into the meeting. And it's very different. Yeah. So sometimes it's something like we need a tracking pixel or stuff from online marketing. Sometimes it's from the country teams, something about payment method they need in their country. Let's see about what else. Sometimes it's even text changes, translations, stuff like this. So it could be very tiny things, but could be bigger things, especially when they come from other development teams. So they often have feature requests and they say, we don't have the expertise, could you do this for us? But then it's more like a user story. Okay? Yes?
The development team that's taking in this work, in which they put in the work that they want, and then what I was going to ask was, since the backlog or an options tool or whatever you want to call it, is what a lot of people use to determine how many people they need to work on the team. How do you guys look at what staffing levels you need based on what people are asking for?
Okay. So there were two questions, right?
Yeah, just one of them says your team, where the innovation and the things they think they need.
Okay. Yeah. So when does this team fit into their things? It's also done in this meeting or directly after the meeting. And the other question was, sorry. Yeah. Okay, the staffing of the team. So how do we decide how many people we need on the team, right? Yeah. So we have pretty much stable teams. They don't change. And we don't work in project. We don't have project teams. We have product teams. So these teams stay stable pretty for months or even years. So the only thing we need to do is have a look, what's our capacity, how many free slots do we have in the next column, and then put the items into the column. Okay. Yes, sir.
Back to your photo example. So
Okay, so this was going back to my example with local optimization and how many photos people could have on the website and how we decide this, right? Yeah. So I don't know how this decision was made, and so if 100 is sufficient or if we need 200 or 300. And my point here is it's important to have this discussion and to have different teams and different stakeholders in one room and discuss this. And that's why I think we need this bird's eye view. So people see, there's local optimization happening, or before we implement this limit, let's have a discussion what might happen. And let's pull in people from support and sales, for example.
I didn't hear the word customer.
Sorry? Where's the customer? Okay. Yeah, that's a difficult question. Where's the customer? So we have pretty much, in some teams we have like classic Scrum product owners, and they are kind of interacting with the customers. And we have a very strong customer support, and they are also like the voice of the customer. And we try to include them in as many decisions as we can. In some situations we have real customer in these discussions, but we can definitely get better there. So customers are, at the moment, they are not really often included in these kinds of decisions, but we're trying to get there. There were some more questions. Yes, please.
So what, I guess, how do you go about making a consensus-driven decision, and how frequent are your
You mean the open prioritization meeting? So it's bi-weekly in this team. And the question was about consensus in this meeting. It's not a democratic vote, so the founder has the last call. And he asks for different opinions, and he involves different stakeholders, but then he says, we're doing it this way. Yes?
Bi-weekly, do you mean twice a week or once every other week?
Once every other week. It's not bi-weekly?
It's always
Okay, sorry. Every other week. And it's usually, it lasts for something like 20 to 30 minutes. It's not really long. Yes?
Oh, what if 2 weeks is too long? Like, what if there are emerging requests that come in during those 2 weeks and something is high priority? How's that addressed?
Yeah. They have kind of a fast lane, but they use them very rarely these days. But what they do have is second level tech support. It's also done by this team, and they are reserving like 20% of their capacity for this kind of work. So when they plan how many items can we pull in, they know we cannot utilize our system 100% because we have to do second level support. Yeah, one or more, two questions? Yes?
Can you describe the roles of the people that are in that prioritization meeting?
Yeah, the roles, it's completely different. So we don't prescribe who can attend. Everyone can attend, but usually people, teams assign a person to go to this meeting. Some teams send the same person every time. Some teams send different people. So there's a lot of variety in this. But it's not like you need to have a certain job title to attend this meeting. Okay, one last question, if we have one. Yes?
What if, Congress, his question is, what if that meeting is too frequent? Like, do we expand that out, or we didn't actually get to the stuff that we had to put in next in the last?
Sorry, come again? Didn't understand.
What if you still have plenty of work to do from your last?
Yeah, then the meeting is over after 5 minutes. Yeah, it happened. So yeah, one last comment about this meeting. We started this at this team, and very, very fast it spread throughout other teams. So other teams started doing the same thing, and we didn't tell them to do this. And this is a really great thing. So this evolving, things are evolving, and teams are adopting this. But what we saw is, for some teams, these kind of meetings are working really well. For some teams, they don't. And that's the classic thing you have when you adopt something and implement it in a different environment. You might end up with cargo culting. And we see this in some teams. So I think it's really important to encourage other teams to adopt this, do the same thing, but then to be there and coach them. So does it really work for you? Do you need a weekly meeting or only monthly meeting? How much capacity do you have for this kind of work, and what time is the best time for this meeting, and so on and so on. So this is one lesson I learned. You cannot just implement it once and then see how it grows through the company, because yeah, you might have some cargo cult in there. Okay, thank you.